What happens when a hero's quiet courage meets a world too rushed to notice? When a single oversight unveils a truth that could change an empire? The airport terminal buzzed with restless energy, a kaleidoscope of hurried steps and murmured. Impatience. Overhead, screens flickered with flight numbers, while the hum of rolling suitcases and distant announcements filled the air. At gate C22A, a line of passengers snaked toward a jet bridge, their faces a mix of exhaustion and anticipation. Amid the chaos, one man stood apart, his presence soft but unshakable, like a stone in a rushing stream. Walter Grayson shuffled forward, his cane tapping gently on the polished floor. His faded army jacket hung loose on his thin frame, its patches worn from decades of memory unit crests, service bars, a life etched in thread. Beneath a weathered cap, white wisps framed his lined face, and his eyes, though tired, held a glimmer of pride. At 79, Walter didn't travel much, but this flight to Seattle was different, a ceremony to honor his old unit. One of the last times he'd see the few comrades still standing. He clutched a boarding pass, its edges creased from anxious fingers, and approached the gate. Claire Novak, the agent behind the counter, barely looked up as Walter handed over his pass. Her name tag gleamed, her smile practiced but thin. At 25, she navigated the morning rush with efficiency, her ponytail swinging as she typed. "Sir," she said, voice polite but clipped, "this ticket's not valid for this flight." Walter's brows furrowed, his grip tightening on his cane. "That can't be right," he said, voice steady but puzzled. "Bought it a month ago." "C22 are right here." Claire scanned the pass, her screen flashing red. Her smile faltered, then returned, tighter. "I'm sorry, but that seat's been reassigned. You'll have to wait while we sort it out." Walter sighed, stepping aside as passengers streamed past, their eyes sliding over him. He'd faced worse frostbitten nights in Korea, orders that made no sense, but this stung, a quiet dismissal he hadn't expected. His ceremony wasn't grand, but it mattered. He leaned on his cane, waiting, unnoticed by most, across the gate. A man in a black hoodie leaned against a pillar, his face half hidden by a baseball cap. Ethan Caldwell blended into the crowd, just another traveler with a backpack and a phone. But Ethan was no ordinary passenger. As the owner of Taylor Aviation, he flew incognito to watch his airline's Pulse House staff treated strangers, how they honored the values his grandfather, James Caldwell, had instilled. His sharp eyes narrowed as Claire's tone shifted, her impatience a crack in the facade. Ethan stayed still, but Walter's slumped shoulders burned into his mind, a signal something was wrong. Ethan Caldwell hadn't built Taylor Aviation for fame or fortune, though both had come. He'd started it to honor his grandfather, James Caldwell, a Korean War veteran whose stories of grit and grace shaped Ethan's world. James had taught him that a business wasn't about profit alone, it was about people, about keeping faith with those who trusted you. At 36, Ethan ran a growing airline, but growth had a cost. Complaints had trickled in rush service, overlooked passengers, adrift from James's ideals. Reports from managers glowed with metrics, but Ethan trusted what he saw over what he read. Today, Gate C22 was his lens. He'd chosen this flight randomly, blending in with jeans and a hoodie, his boarding pass unmarked by privilege. Ethan's habit of going undercover wasn't about catching mistakes. It was about feeling the airline's heart, the way James had felt a unit's morale. He'd seen good days, where staff shone, and bad ones, where haste trumped care. Now, watching Walter Grayson, he sensed the latter. The old man's army jacket, his patient weight, stirred memories of James' same quiet dignity, same unasked for respect. Ethan's jaw tightened as Claire Novak brushed Walter aside, her focus on the line, not the man. Claire's coworker, Mark, loud nearby, scrolling his phone. Ethan caught their hushed exchange. "Overbooked again," Claire muttered. He'll wait. Easier than bumping a VIP," Mark shrugged. "Just don't let him make a scene." Ethan's fingers curled around his phone, his pulse quickening. Overbooking happened, systems failed, but dismissing a man like Walter wasn't a glitch. It was a choice. He remembered James's stories of men overlooked, their sacrifices buried under bureaucracy. Ethan had vowed Taylor Aviation would be different, a place where every passenger mattered. Yet here was Walter, sidelined, his cane trembling under his weight. He edged closer, pretending to check a flight board, his ears tuned to Claire's next move. A mother with a small boy passed Walter, the child pointing at his jacket's patches. "Look, Mommy medals." The mother hushed him, hurrying on, her glance apologetic but fleeting. Walter smiled faintly, unbothered, but Ethan's chest ached. That smile wasn't resignation. It was endurance, the kind James had described in foxholes, in marshes, in moments no one saw. Claire returned. To Walter, her tone flat. "Still working on it, sir. Might be a later flight." Walter nodded, his voice low. "I've got a ceremony tomorrow." Old friends, not many left. Ethan's resolve hardened. Ceremony or not, Walter deserved his seat, not a wait, not an excuse. He pocketed his phone, ready to step in, but held back, wanting to see how far Claire would push. Walter's patience was a mirror, reflecting Ethan's own test. Would he watch or act? The gate pulsed with travelers, oblivious to the quiet drama unfolding. But for Ethan, the world had narrowed to one man and the promise he carried. The gate area thrummed with restless motion, passengers jostling toward the jet bridge as Claire. Novak's voice crackled over the intercom. "Final call for Seattle, C22A." Walter Grayson stood to the side, his cane a steady anchor, his boarding pass still unaccepted. The line dwindled, but Claire's attention stayed on her screen, her fingers tapping with practiced indifference. Walter's eyes drifted to the gate's window, where planes gleamed under morning light, their promise of flight just out of reach. He murmured, almost to himself, "Just need to get there for the boys." Ethan Caldwell hovered nearby, his hoodie no longer a disguise but a weight. Claire's dismissal, might be a later flight, echoed in his mind, each word a betrayal of what Taylor Aviation should be. Walter's mention of a ceremony, of old friends, wasn't just a detail. It was a call, the kind James Caldwell would have answered without hesitation. Ethan's grandfather had spoken of men like Walter soldiers who carried their units. Heart long after the war ended. Yet here, in Ethan's own airline, that heart was being ignored. He stepped forward, his voice calm but edged with authority. "Excuse me," he said, catching Claire's eye. "What's the issue with this gentleman's ticket?" Claire blinked, startled, her professional mask slipping. "Oh, no issue, sir," she said, recovering. "We're just sorting it out." "Sorting it out by leaving him here?" Ethan asked, his brow lifting. "He's got a valid ticket, doesn't he?" Walter turned, surprised, his cane shifting. "It's all right, son," he said, voice gentle. "I don't want trouble." "No trouble," Ethan said, meeting Walter's gaze with a small smile. "Just making sure things are right." Claire flushed, glancing at Mark, who'd wandered. Over, his phone now pocketed. "It's overbooked," she said, defensive. "We reassigned his seat. We'll get him on another flight." "Overbooking's your mistake, not his," Ethan said, his tone hardening. "He's boarding this one." Mark stepped in, his voice low. "Look, buddy, we're handling it. Step back." Ethan held his ground, eyes locked on Claire. "Check the system again. Find his seat." Claire hesitated, then typed, her screen flashing. "There's one in the back," she admitted, voice tight. "Last row, by the restroom." Walter nodded, resigned. That'll do. Ethan's jaw clenched. It wasn't enough, not for a man whose jacket bore the weight of service, but it was a start. Get him on, he told Claire, softer now. No more delays. As Claire printed a new pass, Ethan helped Walter with his bag, their steps slow toward the jet bridge. The old man's duffel slipped, a metallic glint spilling onto the floor, a metal, polished but old, its ribbon faded. Ethan knelt, heart skipping as he read the inscription, Distinguished Service Cross. His breath caught. James had one, displayed on their mantel, its story a bedtime tale of courage. This yours? Ethan asked, handing it back. Walter nodded, tucking it away. Long time ago. On the plane, Ethan took a seat near Walter, ignoring his assigned row. The cabin hummed, passengers settling, but Ethan's mind raced. You said a ceremony, he ventured. Your unit? Last of us, Walter said. Eyes distant. Korea, 51. Not many left to tell it. Ethan leaned closer, voice soft. My grandfather was there, James Caldwell. Ever know him? Walter's gaze sharpened, a flicker of memory. James, good man. Got him out of a bad spot once. He ever tell you? Ethan froze, pieces clicking. He tried, he said, voice thick. I didn't listen close enough. Walter chuckled. Weary but warm. He was stubborn. Bet you are too. The engines roared, lifting them skyward, but Ethan barely noticed. Walter Grayson wasn't just a passenger. He was a thread to James to a past Ethan had vowed to honor. Claire's mistake. The metals glint. This moment, it wasn't chance. It was a reckoning, and Ethan wouldn't let it pass. The plane hummed at cruising altitude, a cocoon of soft murmurs and engine drone. But for Ethan Caldwell, the world had narrowed to the man beside him. Walter Grayson sat in the cramped last row, his army jacket folded neatly on his lap, the duffel with its hidden metal tucked at his feet. The faint scent of coffee lingered from a passing cart, but Ethan's focus was on Walter's weathered hands, resting still but heavy with history. The revelation that Walter had saved his grandfather, James Caldwell, in Korea wasn't just a coincidence, it was a debt, one Ethan felt in his bones, sharpened by the sting of how his airline had treated the old soldier. Ethan shifted, keeping his voice low. You said you got my grandfather out of a bad spot. Mind telling me more? Walter's eyes, half closed, opened slowly, their gray depths glinting with memory. Not much to tell, he said, his tone humble but firm. Korea, 51. Bitter. Cold, worse odds. James took a hit in a firefight leg, bad enough to ground him. I dragged him to cover, kept him talking till help came. Just what you do. Ethan leaned closer, picturing the chaos snow, gunfire, a young James bleeding. Out. Just what you do? He echoed. Sounds like more than that. Walter chuckled, a dry sound, maybe to him. We all leaned on each other out there. Your granddad, he kept us laughing, even when the line broke. Stubborn as hell. Ethan smiled, James's wry grin flashing in his mind. That's him. Never said much about you, though. Why's that? Walter shrugged, his gaze drifting to the window, where clouds stretched endless. Men like James didn't dwell. War is heavy, why pass it on? He wrote me a few times after. Sent a bottle of bourbon once. That was enough. The weight of Walter's words settled, each one a glimpse into a bond Ethan had only half known. James's stories had been vivid, but selective tales of camaraderie, not sacrifice. Now, sitting beside Walter, Ethan felt the gaps fill, but with them came shame. His airline, built to honor James's values, had dismissed a man who'd carried James home. Claire Novak's curt words, "No seat for you," echoed, a failure Ethan owned. You're headed to a ceremony, Ethan said, steering gently. For your unit? Walter nodded, his voice softening. Last of the 23rd. Few of us left. They're giving us a plaque, some words. Feels right to be there. Ethan's chest tightened, imagining Walter standing alone for men long gone. You deserve that, he said, and a better seat than this. Walter waved a hand, dismissive. This'll do. Then in tighter spots. Ethan bit back a protest. The restroom's hum, a reminder of Claire's half-fix. He wanted to promise more. First-class seat, an apology, but something held him. Walter's humility wasn't just manners. It was armor, forged in battles Ethan could only imagine. Instead, he said, "When we land, let me buy you a coffee. I'd like to hear more, if you're willing." Walter studied him, a faint smile, creasing his face, persistent like James. "All right, son. Coffee it is." As the plane tilted toward descent, Ethan felt a spark ignite, not just gratitude, but purpose. Walter wasn't just a passenger. He was a call to make things right, for James, for every veteran his airline had overlooked. The clouds parted below, Seattle's skyline faint but growing, and Ethan knew this flight was only the start. The Seattle airport was a blur of motion, travelers weaving through baggage claim with the urgency of a tide. Ethan Caldwell guided Walter Grayson to a quiet corner cafe, its wooden tables a haven from the terminal's din. Walter eased into a chair, his cane propped against the wall, his army jacket still folded like a shield. Ethan ordered 2 coffees, black, and sat across from him, the steam curling between them like a bridge. The metals glint, Walter's story, James's name. They'd stirred something Ethan couldn't shake. A need to right a wrong before it hardened into regret. He set his cup down, meeting Walter's steady gaze. "Mr. Grayson, I owe you an apology. What happened at the gate that wasn't right? You deserve better." Walter sipped his coffee, unhurried. "No harm done, son. Things get messy. I've seen worse." "It's not just messy," Ethan said, voice firm. "It's wrong. You paid for a seat, had a place to be, and my staff pushed you aside." "I can't let that slide." Walter's brow lifted, curious. "Your staff?" Ethan exhaled, shedding his cover. "I'm Ethan Caldwell. I own Taylor Aviation." Walter paused, his cup halfway to his lips, then set it down with a soft clink. "Well, now," he said, a wry smile breaking through. "Didn't see that coming. James's grandson, running planes. He'd be proud." Ethan shook his head, guilt sharp. "Not today, he wouldn't. My grandfather built his life on respect, said it's what kept men alive out there. I built this airline for him, but we failed you. That's on me." Walter leaned back, his eyes searching Ethan's face. "Mistakes happen, Ethan. What matters is what you do after." The words landed, simple but heavy, echoing James's lessons. Ethan nodded, resolve forming. "Then let me start now. I'd like to make this right for you, for others like you." Walter waved a hand, his humility unshaken. "Don't need fuss. I'm here, ain't I?" Ethan leaned forward, undeterred. "It's not fuss. It's respect. I'm giving you a lifetime pass first class, any flight, no questions. It's the least I can do." Walter's eyes widened, a flicker of surprise breaking his calm. "That's too much, son." "It's not enough," Ethan countered, voice thick. "You saved my grandfather. That's my family, my life. Let me thank you." Silence hung, the cafe's hum fading. Walter's fingers brushed his jacket, where the metal lay hidden. "All right," he said finally, voice low. "For James." Ethan smiled, relief washing through him. But the pass was only a gesture, a spark. Walter's story, his sacrifice, his quiet endurance demanded more than a ticket. It demanded change, the kind James would have fought for. As they sipped their coffee, Ethan's mind raced, a vision taking shape, a way to honor not just Walter, but every veteran his airline touched. The ceremony waited, but so did a bigger promise. one Ethan was only beginning to grasp. Back in his Seattle hotel, Ethan Caldwell paced his room, the city's skyline a muted glow beyond the window. Walter Grayson's face lingered, his weathered smile, his refusal to demand more than he'd earned. Their coffee had stretched past. An hour, Walter sharing scraps of Korea, frostbitten marshes, shared cigarettes, James's bad jokes, keeping the dark at bay. Each story carved deeper into Ethan, a reminder of what Taylor Aviation had lost in its rush to grow. Claire Novak's dismissal wasn't just a misstep. It was a symptom, one Ethan needed to cure. He fired up his laptop, emailing his operations manager, Sarah, to set up an urgent meeting. "Need to talk veteran policies," he typed. "Gate issue, today unacceptable." But a meeting wasn't enough. Ethan opened a blank document, jotting ideas. Priority boarding, free upgrades, a way to recognize service without fanfare. Walter's humility had shown him that honor wasn't loud, but it had to be real. He pictured James, his medal on the mantle, saying, "Take care of your people, Ethan. That's the job." The next morning, Ethan joined a virtual call with his senior team, their faces flickering on screen. Sarah listened intently, but Paul, the CFO, frowned as Ethan outlined his vision. "Honor Flight Initiative," Ethan said, testing the name. "Veterans get priority, upgrades when we can, and staff trained to spot them, not just IDs, but stories, like a man in an old army jacket." Paul leaned forward, skeptical. "Sounds noble, Ethan, but upgrades cost seats. Training's time, money. We're not a charity." "We're not," Ethan agreed, voice steady. "But we're losing trust. Passengers like Walter Grayson heroes walk away feeling invisible. That costs more than dollars. Fix this. We build loyalty, not just flights." Sarah nodded, jotting notes. "I like it. We could partner with vet groups, offer discounts. PR's a bonus, but it's the right call." Paul sighed. "Fine, but cap it. 10 upgrades a month max. And no lifetime passes. That's a black hole." Ethan's jaw tightened, Walter's medal flashing in his mind. "One pass," he said. "Already given. Non-negotiable." The call ended, tension lingering, but Ethan felt alive, purpose replacing doubt. He dialed Claire Novak's supervisor, requesting her presence at a special session post-ceremony. Claire needed to face Walter's story, not as punishment, but as a chance to grow. Ethan wouldn't fire her, James had believed in second chances, but she'd learn or she'd leave. His phone buzzed the text from Walter, sent via borrowed number. Made it to the hotel. "Thanks for the coffee." Ethan smiled, typing back, "Glad you're there. Mind speaking to my team after your ceremony? Your story matters." Walter's reply came slow. "Not one for speeches, but for James." "I'll try." Ethan set the phone down, the skyline sharper now. Walter's voice wasn't just for the 23rd. It was for Taylor Aviation, for every gate agent who'd forgotten to look, for every passenger who deserved to be seen. The initiative was a seed, fragile but rooted, and Ethan would nurture it, starting with one old soldier's truth. The Seattle conference room at Taylor Aviation's regional office was a stark contrast to the airport's chaos-polished wood. Soft lighting, a hum of anticipation instead of urgency. Ethan Caldwell stood at the door, greeting staff as they filed in for a special session. His hoodie was gone, replaced by a crisp button-down, but his eyes carried the same fire that sparked when he'd met Walter Grayson. Today, Walter would speak, not just for himself, but for every veteran Taylor Aviation had overlooked. Ethan's pulse quickened, knowing this moment could shift his airline's soul. Walter sat at the head of the table, his cane propped nearby, his army jacket folded over the chair. At 79, he looked small against the corporate backdrop, but his presence filled the room, a quiet gravity that hushed murmurs. Claire Novak slipped in late, her face pale, eyes darting to Walter before settling on her notepad. She'd been told little, only that this meeting was mandatory, but Ethan saw her unease. A flicker of guilt from gate C22. Ethan stepped forward, voice clear. Thanks for coming. Today's not about policies or numbers. It's about people. Mr. Walter Grayson, a veteran of Korea, has a story we need to hear. It's why we're here, why we do this job. Walter cleared his throat, his hands steady, despite the eyes on him. I'm no speaker, he began, voice rough but firm. Never cared for crowds. But Ethan asked, and from a unit for the 23rd, I'll try. He paused, gazing past the room, back to 1951. Korea was cold. Not just the weather, but the fear. We were kids, most of us told to hold lines against odds that didn't add up. Lost half my squad in one night, friends. I still see when I close my eyes. The room stilled, pencils frozen. Claire's breath caught, her pen trembling. Walter continued, his words plain but piercing. We fought for each other, not medals. James Caldwell, Ethan's granddad, was one of us. Kept U.S. sane with bad jokes, even when bullets flew. Saved him once, he saved me plenty. That's what war was. You carried your brother, or you fell alone. Ethan watched, chest tight, as Walter's voice wavered only once, naming the dead. Claire's eyes glistened, her notepad forgotten. I don't talk about this much. Walter said, hurts too many gone. But if I'm here, it's to say we didn't fight for thanks. We fought for home. Don't forget the folks who got you there. Silence followed, heavy with awe. Ethan stepped up, voice thick. Thank you. Mr. Grayson, your story's why we're changing, starting with respect for you and every veteran. Claire raised a shaky hand, her voice barely audible. Mr. Grayson, I'm the one from the gate. I'm so sorry. I didn't know. Didn't see you. Walter met her gaze, his eyes kind but unflinching. Mistakes happen, young lady. What you do next, that's what counts. Claire nodded, tears spilling, and Ethan felt the room shift, a crack in the old ways sealing shut. Walter's words weren't just memory. They were a call, one Ethan vowed to answer. The days after Walter's speech buzzed with quiet change at Taylor Aviation's Seattle hub. Ethan Caldwell worked late, refining the Honor Flight Initiative priority boarding upgrade pools, training to spot veterans like Walter Grayson, not just by ID, but by their stories. Staff whispered about Walter, his voice lingering like a tide that reshaped the shore, but not everyone embraced it. Claire Novak faced sidelong glances from colleagues, her gate mistake now an open secret. Mark, her coworker, muttered about special treatment, his skepticism and drag on the mood. Claire sat in the break room, her lunch untouched, replaying Walter's words, what you do next. She'd apologized, but words felt thin against her shame. She'd seen Walter as a problem, not a person, and the truth stung her rush. Her assumptions had dishonored a man who'd carried others through hell. Ethan had kept her on, no write-up. But trust was fragile, and Claire knew she had to earn it back. She found Ethan in his temporary office, papers strewn across the desk. Mr. Caldwell, she said, voice steady despite her nerves. I want to help with Honor Flight. Train staff. Maybe teach them what I got wrong. Ethan studied her, his gaze piercing but not unkind. Why, Claire, to clear your conscience. She flinched but held firm. No, because I owe it to Mr. Grayson, to everyone I didn't see. I can do better. Ethan nodded, a spark of respect in his eyes. All right, start with a session tomorrow. Show them how to listen, not just check boxes. Claire threw herself into it, drafting a guide. Look for the jacket, the cap, the quiet ones. Ask their story, not their status. At the training, Mark slouched in the back, arms crossed. This is extra work, he said, loud enough to draw eyes. We're not social workers. It's not extra, Claire shot back, surprising herself. It's the job. I ignored a veteran mark. You want to be next? The room tensed, but nods followed slow, then steady. Claire shared Walter's story, her voice breaking as she admitted her fault. I saw an old man, not a hero. Don't make my mistake. Ethan watched from the side, a faint smile forming. Claire wasn't just atoning, she was leading, her guilt forging purpose. He texted Sarah, his operations manager. Training's working. Push it nationwide. But his mind was on Walter, now at his ceremony, and a bigger idea one that could carry Walter's name beyond Seattle, beyond a single flight. 2 weeks later, Taylor Aviation's Honor Flight Initiative began to soar. Ethan Caldwell's vision took route veterans boarded first at Seattle gates, their caps and jackets earning quiet nods from staff. Claire Novak led training across hubs, her sessions raw but real, her story of Walter Grayson a warning and a spark. Social media buzzed. A vet posted about a free upgrade, tagging #Taylor Aviation. A family thanked Claire for asking their dad's story. Ethan read each one, James Caldwell's voice in his ear. Take care of your people. But Ethan wanted more, not just policy, but permanence. He worked with Sarah to partner with veteran groups, offering discounted family fares and event sponsorships. At a staff meeting, he shared Walter's impact. One man's story changed us. Imagine thousands. Paul, the CFO, still grumbled about costs, but even he softened when a vet sent a handwritten note, praising a gate agent's kindness. Claire's transformation drew notice. Mark, once dismissive, joined her sessions, his sarcasm fading after. Meeting a Vietnam vet who echoed Walter's humility. Didn't think it mattered, Mark admitted to Claire. You proved it does. Claire smiled, weary but proud. It's not me, it's them. Men like Mr. Grayson. Ethan, meanwhile, planned a surprise. In a hangar outside Seattle, he oversaw a secret project, a plane to honor Walter, its design still under wraps. He told Walter it was a routine meeting, not wanting to overwhelm him. But Ethan knew this was bigger than one man. It was for James, for the 23rd, for every veteran who'd felt invisible. He called Walter, catching him post-ceremony, his voice lighter despite fatigue. How'd it go? Ethan asked. Good, Walter said, a smile audible. Saw my boys. Said our piece. Felt right. I'm glad, Ethan said. Got one more ask join us in Seattle next week. Small event. Team wants to thank you. Walter hesitated, his humility a reflex. Don't need thanks, Ethan. It's not just for you, Ethan said, echoing Walter's own wisdom. It's for them. All right, Walter said finally. For James. Ethan hung up, the hangar's blueprint glowing on his screen. A soldier saluting, a flag. Walter Grayson, a legacy of courage. Claire had seen the mock-up, her eyes tearing as she whispered, He'll hate the fuss, but he deserves it. Ethan agreed, but fuss or not, Walter's name would fly, a beacon for the change Ethan was building. The initiative gained traction. Local news ran a piece on Claire's training. Veteran forums praised Taylor Aviation. A rival airline snarky. Post-PR stunt. Nothing more stung. But Ethan ignored it, letting Walter's story answer. He emailed Sarah. Prep the hangar. It's time. The ceremony loomed, not just a moment but a milestone, and Ethan felt James's hand on his shoulder, guiding him toward a promise kept. The Seattle hangar glowed under dawn's first light, its vast doors open to a crowd of Taylor Aviation staff, veterans, and local reporters. A massive plane stood veiled, its shape a quiet promise beneath a draped banner. Ethan Caldwell paced. Near the stage, his tie loosened, his heart racing with purpose. A year ago, he'd been a shadow at Gate C22, watching Walter Grayson's dignity tested. Now, he stood ready to honor that dignity, not just for Walter, but for every veteran. His airline had failed to see. This wasn't a gesture. It was a vow etched in steel and sky. Walter Grayson arrived, leaning on his cane, his army jacket crisp despite its age. Ethan had kept the event's true purpose vague. "Team, thank you," he'd said, knowing Walter's humility would balk at fanfare. Walter's eyes scanned the hangar, curious but wary, as Claire Novak greeted him with a nervous smile. "Good to see you, Mr. Grayson," she said, her voice warm, no trace of the gate agent who dismissed him. Walter nodded, kind as ever. "You too, young lady." Ethan took the stage, the microphone's hum settling the crowd. "Today's special," he began, voice steady but charged. "Taylor Aviation's here to celebrate a man whose story changed. You's Mr. Walter Grayson, a hero of Korea, a man who carried my grandfather, James Caldwell, through fire and never asked for thanks. His courage, his heart, showed us what we'd lost and what we could become." The crowd stirred, veterans in caps and jackets nodding, staff standing taller. Claire's eyes glistened, her notepad clutched tight. Ethan gestured to Walter, who shifted, uncomfortable but present. "This isn't just for him," Ethan continued. "It's for every veteran who's walked our gates unseen. Honor flight's our start, but today we go further." With a nod, Ethan signaled the crew. The banner fell, revealing a gleaming plane, its fuselage painted with a soldier saluting against a flag, the tail bold with Walter Grayson, a legacy of courage. Gasps rippled, cameras flashed. Walter's cane trembled, his mouth parting, eyes wide with shock. "Lord Ethan," he murmured, voice barely audible. "What have you done?" Ethan knelt beside him, grinning. "Every flight this plane takes carries your story, Walter. For you, for James, for the 23rd. Walter blinked, tears brimming, his hand gripping Ethan's shoulder. "I don't deserve this," he said, voice thick. "My boys, they should be here." "They are," Ethan said softly. "Through you." Applause erupted, loud and raw, veterans cheering, Claire clapping through tears. She approached Walter, her voice shaking. "Mr. Grayson, I was wrong that day. You taught me to see. Thank you for your service, for giving me a chance." Walter smiled, gentle. "You're doing fine now, Claire." "Keep it up." The hangar buzzed, Walter's name a beacon. Ethan watched, James's lessons alive in the roar. Take care of your people. This plane wasn't the end. It was a beginning, a promise to fly true. Months later, Taylor Aviation shone as a model of change. The Walter Grayson plane crisscrossed skies, its murals sparking stories, passengers snapping photos, veterans sharing memories online. Honor flight flourished. Priority boarding was standard. Upgrades routine, and Claire Novak's training reached every hub, her once clipped tone now a call to listen. Ethan Caldwell read posts nightly. A World War II vet thanked a gate agent for asking his story. A family praised a free seat for their Marine son. Each one felt by James's nod, Walter's quiet smile. Ethan stood in his office, a framed photo of Walter beside James's medal. Honor Flight had grown partnerships with vet groups, cut fares, events celebrated service, and a storytelling platform launched. Walter's voice the first, but ripples met resistance. A rival airline, Skypulse, sneered online. Taylor's buying praise with stunts. Doubt crept into some staff. Paul, the CFO, flagged a dip in short-term profits. "Goodwill's great, Ethan," he said, "but numbers don't lie." "Neither do people," Ethan countered, showing Paul a letter from a vet who'd flown. "Free to see his dying brother. This is why we're here." Claire faced her own test. At a training session, a new hire scoffed. "Why fuss over old guys? They're just passengers." Claire's jaw tightened, Walter's cane tapping in her mind. "They're not just anything," she said, voice fierce. I ignored a hero once thought he was just an old man. He saved lives, changed mine. You decide who you'll miss. The hire blushed, others nodded, and Claire felt Walter's lessons settle deeper. She'd earned respect, not just from staff but from vets who knew her story. Her mistake now a bridge to their trust. Ethan pushed forward, hosting a vet summit where Walter spoke again, his voice stronger, less guarded. War's heavy, he said, but carrying each other, that's what lasts. A reporter asked Ethan about Skypulse's jab. He smiled, calm. We don't fly for likes, we fly for folks like Walter. Back at the hangar, Claire handed Ethan a folder on her. Flight's first-year stats. Thousands served, trust scores up, sales climbing slow but steady. You were right, she said. It's not just good, it's us. Ethan nodded, his gaze on the Walter Grayson plane outside. Skypulse's noise faded. Walter's story drowned it out. James's voice whispered, "You're getting there, kid." Ethan wasn't done. New hubs, more stories, but he'd found his north, and it flew under Walter's name. Summer arrived, and Taylor Aviation stood transformed, its gates alive with purpose. Ethan Caldwell walked the Seattle terminal, the Walter Grayson plane visible through glass, its tail a flare against the sky. Claire Novak led a vet family to their gate, her smile genuine, her training now company gospel. Mark, once skeptical, handed a vet his ID with a quiet, "Thank you, sir." The Honor Flight Initiative wasn't policy, it was breath, flowing through every check-in, every flight. Ethan paused by a display. Walter's medal, a photo from the ceremony, a plaque quoting him, "We fought for home." Beside it, Claire's first training guide sat framed, her handwriting neat. See the story, not the seat. A new letter joined them, Walter's, sent after a vet event. "Ethan, you made an old man feel seen." That's more than I hoped. One evening, Walter visited, cane steady, his eyes brighter. "Got your invite," he said, holding a ticket for the plane's anniversary flight. "Didn't think I'd see my name up there." Ethan grinned, clapping his shoulder. "You earned it, Walter." For James, for all of them. Claire approached, shy. "Mr. Grayson, I fly with you today. First class, my choice." Walter chuckled. "Don't need fancy, but I'll take it." As they boarded, Ethan watched, the plane's engines a low roar. Walter settled by a window, his gaze on the tail, his name, his boys, soaring. Ethan stayed below, the crowd's cheers from the hangar echoing. He'd sought to fix a gate mistake. He'd found a calling to honor, to hear, to carry forward what James and Walter taught. Ethan slipped on his hoodie, ready for another flight, another gate. Trust wasn't a plaque, it was a daily walk, and he'd keep walking, for Walter, for every story waiting to be seen. The plane climbed, a spark against the dusk, and Ethan smiled. Some legacies didn't fade, they flew. Walter Grayson's story is a beacon of humanity, courage, humility, and the quiet power of being seen. A veteran's overlooked dignity sparked Ethan's awakening, showing that one life, one story can reshape a system. Walter's grace, Claire's redemption, Ethan's resolve. They remind us that respect isn't owed. It's earned, given, shared, binding us to those who've carried our freedoms. This isn't just a tale of flights, it's proof that listening heals, that mistakes mend when faced with heart. The lessons endure. See the person, not the problem. Own your flaws and build from them. Honor sacrifice with action, not words. Walter's legacy, his name on a plane, his story in countless hearts, teaches us to lift those who've lifted us, to make every gate a welcome. We all hold that power, to turn oversight into insight, to fly true. Love stories that stir the soul? Subscribe to Legacy Stories on YouTube, where tales of grit, grace, and change light the way. Hit that button, join our sky, and let's keep honoring the stories that soar.